Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hope you're doing well. So, I noticed that PearlyThings is promoting MGTOW as a legitimate movement. And MGTOW is men going their own way. And these guys are pretty creepy because they spend a lot of time being angry at pretty women. And funny thing is, I follow this guy Sandman MGTOW on BitChute. Pearl retweeted him, and in this dude's thumbnails, he always has hypersexual women because he knows it gets clicks, and the community of the MGTOW men have deep pornographic issues. A lot of them are highly addicted. And what's more bizarre is that when Pearl went on Timcast, she said that pornography is a good, yes, she said good, she implied this through a question, for sexless marriages. So Pearl is pushing porn. She pushes not only porn for incels, because people who are not married, but telling men to watch pornography. She's implying this, saying it indirectly, which is clever when you pose it through a question. And she tells women that if you have had sex before quickly, you cannot make a man wait for sex. I have provided plenty of screenshots and mentioned different videos where she has said this outright. So she has also told single moms that they don't deserve a monogamous marriage because they have children from a previous relationship. She has also said that high-value men are allowed to cheat and that a traditional woman has to stay with a man who cheats. And if she divorces him and tries to find someone else or heal her heart in that way, then she's a modern woman, not traditional, and is bad. And so if you notice Pearl's rhetoric, all the things she's promoting go against Christianity. She wears a cross. She calls herself a Catholic. No, she's not an atheist. As some trolls have pointed out, she has frequently said that she is a Catholic. And she goes farther than that by talking to very famous incels like Nick Fuentes and John Zahra, who he isn't an incel, but he's a degenerate. He has had sex with over 1,000 women, he claims, which I don't believe, but if you take him at his word, he is somebody who hates women so much that he creates the very women he mocks. So, in those 1,000 women, a lot of them were in relationships, were married. So he persuaded them and allowed them to be dishonorable. And then he turns around and goes on shows like Fresh and Fit and has interviews with Pearl and mocks them. Now, he claimed he has read Albert Pike's Morals and Dogma 10 times. I have that book on my bookshelf. I had some videos of me reading it, but some Islamic extremists thought I was doing witchcraft when I was just trying to explain it, so I had to delete it due to all the death threats. But he claims he's read it 10 times, which I highly doubt because it's such a thick, dense book. He called it a work of poetry, so he was praising the book. I don't think it's poetry at all. And he claims to be really into occultism and Freemasonry, but then at the same time says he's a Catholic as well. So he tries to blend occultism with Christianity. So if you recall, I constantly say that occultists serve a very sexual agenda. Okay, they serve a very sexual agenda. And for PearlyThings to promote a guy who is into occultism, who's a sexual degenerate, someone who's a hypocrite because he is not virtuous himself, and he doesn't deserve a good woman after he's slept with that many women. No good father would ever want his daughter to marry such a disgusting man because he's probably caught STDs, given them, spread them, caught them, all that. Some of those girls probably got pregnant, got abortions. So he has such a nasty, sticky, slimy reputation that you have to keep some predator like that away from the virtuous women. Because if any woman of virtue got with him, it would lower her reputation. And he's not a high value man in terms of common sense. But PearlyThings was blushing, gushing, really excited to get the male attention from such a sexual degenerate, while also just really hating women who've gotten divorces, women who've decided that they want something else for their life, that they don't worship at the altar of the phallus. And so, for Pearl to promote the MGTOW movement and say it's a legitimate path for men is self-destructive. These pick-me women are dangerous for men just as simps are dangerous for women. Because they're gonna parrot back ideas to get views and money, and they don't really think of the ethics of it. They don't think about the consequences. These MGTOW men viciously hate women. They're dangerous. And they're dangerous for themselves, but also for women in general. They complain about women's body count, but then they consume pornography, which incentivizes women to keep creating such content. And for Pearl to push porn on young men is very destructive. And when she does it, she says, oh, it's a solution. It's not a solution. It's a detriment. It will always be evil. And so already right there, you see that Pearl is not traditional at all. By Islamic standards, by Protestant, Mormon, Presbyterian, Lutheran, or Catholic standards. She's somebody who is a career woman, unmarried, had sex before marriage, had sex with a rapper who dumped her, and that's not a traditional woman, doesn't go after a rapper, after a thug rapper. And so Pearl herself is a walking hypocrisy. It's okay for her to have a job. It's okay for her to be childless. She is college educated, but mocks women who don't have kids and go to college. So this is a rich girl who had her dad pay for everything, which is fine, but she has not a real idea of what it's like to actually live with a man. She herself admitted on the Whatever podcast she's not been in a relationship, not even for 2 years. So here we have a woman who has not been in a relationship for longer than 2 years, which shows that she has a bad selection and bad taste in men. If you can't keep a fat rapper happy, who are you to lecture religious women on how to keep their men happy? She has told women that they have to stay in an unhappy marriage. She told them, fuck your happiness. She literally said that. I did a video on that, and she's repeated that often. So she's very anti-woman and very pro-male, but she's promoting things to men that hurt them. So she's not really a men's right activist. If she was focusing on how there needs to be better domestic violence centers for men, how there needs to be more therapy sessions for men, I would understand, but she mocks therapy. So she mocks mental health for women, but then turns around and says that men need more emotional support. So if you take a step back and you see how detrimental her agenda is, her philosophy, her antics, you begin to see how she's a threat to women, and she's not traditional. And if PearlyThings was preaching the utility of pornography in an Islamic society, would the Muslim mothers want to hear that? Would the Muslim wives want to hear that when it's already destroying relationships, destroying minds? And if a marriage is sexless, she says a man can cheat. So if a woman has a husband who's a soldier and he's overseas for longer than 6 months, is it okay for her to cheat? No, right? Pearl would say no. But if a woman just had a baby and she's going through postpartum depression, she's kind of exhausted from waking up every 3 hours to feed the baby in the night, she's just feeling uncomfortable in her own body, she's bleeding, she's having mood swings, her hormones are imbalanced, her nipples are sore because she's nursing, her back hurts, she's got multiple kids, sex is not the first thing on her mind. It's survive as a mom and get through as best she can through the day. And most women don't feel sexy the first, 4 months after their baby. Some women do if they're able to have some help. They go jogging, they have a family to help them, but a lot of women have to do it themselves, which is fine. We're tough for it, but it just goes to show that Pearl doesn't actually know how tough it is to be a mother and to be a wife. She was only a girlfriend for less than 2 years. And experience does matter when you're sitting there on your pedestal bashing women over the head with your propaganda and your agenda because you want views from the incel crowd. She's not inviting, wise women. She's inviting women who are a bit sometimes broken or don't agree with Pearl's parroting. Okay? The men who are just chucking money at her or think they have a champion in the women's arena, but they actually don't. Because Pearl is telling you to cheat on your wife if you have enough money, and that you have to find a woman who will allow you to cheat. If a woman allows you to cheat, she's facilitating sin. If she's helping you to sin, she's helping you to earn hellfire. And this double hypocrisy of men can cheat but women can't creates more damages in marriages and puts more marriages at risk because you're tempting men with adultery, which is already difficult. So hard for men to not masturbate, to not watch porn, and to not cheat. Okay? And PearlyThings blaming women for a sexless marriage and not saying, well, how can they rekindle their relationship? How can they become closer? This shows you she's not about solutions, but she's rather just about blaming the women to appease the incel MGTOW men. And so when you see her cozying up to Nick Fuentes, who has some peculiar views on women, he can be funny with some things he said, like how witches should be drowned in a river and whatnot. That was pretty funny. I have paid attention to Nick Fuentes now for about 4 years, so I'm very familiar with his content. And he's savvy with politics, but for marriage and relationships, no. He's proud to be an incel. And he is best buds with Milo Yiannopoulos, who hates Muslims and is gay and has to do the self-punishment to make him not like men. So he's not really exactly around the happiest of marriages in his personal life, right? And so he does get women, though, who chase him. I'll give him that. There's a lot of MAGA girls who they seem to want to have a very abusive guy who doesn't like them and mocks women. But when he had his debate with Styx Exenhammer, Styx put on the cat ear glasses, headband, and everyone knows the Catboy meme where Nick hung out with a gay guy and was like just gushing over him. So people have some suspicions about Nick's sexuality and that it's most likely bisexual. Even people like Owen Benjamin have made videos about Nick Fuentes and how he's not really masculine in that area. He can be smart in foreign policy, but when it comes to marriage and relationships, he's just not the guy. But it's up to you to decide, I'd argue. But what I'm trying to point out here is how PearlyThings cozies up to Nick Fuentes, to the MGTOW Sandman guy, John Zahra, and she's going to, Fresh Myron from Fashion Fit, who are people who are not really in good relationships themselves, who encourage adultery, fornication, and Myron himself, in one of his recent streams, was saying, that the Quran, is good for Saudi Arabia, but it ain't really good for modern times because women aren't moving like that. And I watched, that live. I dip in and out because these people are influencing the youth, and so we have to pay attention to them with turning the screen off so we don't see the women's bodies. But what I'm trying to get at is she's cozying up to the worst examples of men. Jay Waller, who is a pretty sick individual, in my opinion, because he knows how to make women accept adultery, and he doesn't think he has to be monogamous. And so when you have men who encourage the psychological trauma against women, you see that they're not a friend to women, and that these women who want to have to be provided for, to not live in poverty, have to accept an adulterous male. It just creates more feminists, it just creates more hatred, it just creates more satanic energy, because it's the lust demon that's taken over hold of these people, because they're not promoting you to have self-discipline. They're not telling you to control your desires. They're telling you to unleash your desires at the expense of your woman's happiness. And they take joy in how miserable they can make women by claiming at the same time that they are very manly because they're not simps and they don't need to be nice to women because women come to them either way. So they're psychologically breaking women and traumatizing women and scarring their mental consciousness for life, while at the same time not acknowledging that their behavior creates the sex industry workers. A lot of the women who go into the sex industry were molested, were raped, abused by men, grew up in broken homes, never saw anything better, so they choose that life. Many of them. So these men create the very women who are the stereotype of that industry, and then they turn around and point fingers at them and give them verbal stonings and no solutions, really. And so when you hear Myron on sugar baby websites where he goes after these women and has profiles on these websites and claims it's for research, when it's really him feeding the very system that he mocks, you can see the hypocrisy that's all in this red pill manosphere. So it's important to talk about this because this movement of the Rollo Tomasi vasectomy, the Myron fresh and fit, rotate as many women as possible, when you have this type of John Zechram movement where mixing occultism with Christianity to influence the conservative movement and whatnot, and PearlyThings, gaslighting, manipulating, and being a talking head pick-misha against women, you see that it is a threat. And if you live in the Middle East and you are hunky-dory in your community, fine, but these people influence America, and America already has problems, and we shouldn't stand by as they corrupt our youth. We have to actually work against them and not follow the herd and stand up for what's right and try to help people to be better, not to indulge in decay and everything that threatens the nuclear family. PearlyThings cannot claim to care about the nuclear family when she pushes pornography. If a marriage is sexless, you don't get a green card to cheat. In the Bible, adultery is condemned outright. Repeatedly. I have listed citations for that as well in previous posts and videos. So there is no loophole. So if Pearl is telling you you can commit adultery, she is going against your faith and therefore is not helping you. She's hurting you. Even if what she says feels good because it's coming out of the mouth of a woman, that's a form of witchcraft. You have to look at the truth, what it is. You have to look at the truth. And PearlyThings was a fat girl, a fat rich girl, and she was ignored by the handsome jocks. Now she's lost weight, she has a platform, and men use her for her networking. And then they validate her through likes so that she can be the special girl that's not getting picked on and bullied on by the handsome, I don't think they're handsome, but they think they're handsome men. And so she's able to get back at the pretty girls and watch them get bullied by the men. But in reality, PearlyThings has to realize that sucking up to male abusers isn't going to get you a good husband that you'll want to feel safe with. That you will get a taste of your own medicine. If these type of bad men can abuse some of the most attractive women and you're a 5, you're not attractive really, you got to be careful. You cannot roll with cobras and think that they won't bite you. Because sexual degenerate men have a demonic energy that is infested within their fiber of their being. And they have to exercise themselves from that. But many of the men that Pearl promotes haven't. And the creepy incel guys who always have their hands in their pants and are talking really evil things about women and who are so resentful and see no good in women and telling men to be celibates, this is not healthy. If you're going to be a priest and go celibate and dedicate your life to God, well, that's up to you. They're going after something noble according to their faith. In Islam, celibacy is not exactly promoted, but you are allowed to do it if you can't get married. But you're supposed to try to find a way to get married. And if not, you have patience, but you're not allowed to fornicate. You shouldn't masturbate, and you should not watch pornography. You gotta find a way to distract your mind and control yourself and not let those temptations take over you, because it fractures society and breaks up families. So Pearl promotes, essentially, as I have laid out in many posts and in this video and whatnot, and others online have as well, she promotes things that always hurt women. She can frame it as she's trying to stop single motherhood, but what she's really doing is telling women, you have to accept adultery. You don't have a right to make a man wait because you had sex fast before. Now you cannot change. And if you change and found God that's not good enough, he still has a right to get in your pants. So she's telling men they shouldn't wait. They don't have to wait. And so she's encouraging men to have sexual aggression towards women and to hate women who are not virgins, even though she herself is not a virgin and had sex before marriage and outside of marriage. So she promotes things that would hurt her too in the end, and yet does not see that. Why? Maybe she does see it, I'd argue. But the money. So men have to think, is this woman doing things for clicks and views? And that's a big problem now on YouTube reactions that are not about truth, but about clickbait and just recycling the same content but through different voices, covering the same stories but just giving a different take. Stuff like that doesn't really add to the knowledge base, but just kind of passes on the torch of topic. It doesn't really go beyond or any deeper, but just catches views and whatnot for AdSense revenue. And it's very important to remember that PearlyThings is influencing red pill Muslim men because red pill Muslim men have gone on her podcast, used her platform, helped her get views, helped her get subs. They have not pushed back against her things, but they go after Muslim women quite extensively. Muslim women are more attacked by Muslim men than Pearl is, even though Pearl is pushing things that are really disgusting and horrendous. But since she's friends with the red pill men that the Muslim men like, they somehow are giving her a pass. But the same pass they wouldn't give to a Muslim woman. That's how you can see the blatant hypocrisy. Because they call her based and red-pilled, which actually, I don't even care about this term based, but she's not a traditional woman by any means. A woman allowing you to cheat on her has no self-esteem, has no dignity, and is encouraging the psychological torture of women because no woman wants to stay with a fornicator. No one deserves to have a fornicator if they themselves are good. That is a man abusing a woman emotionally and spiritually because she has nowhere else to go. So imagine you have no job, no education, no money, and you're stuck with a man who constantly cheats on you. Pearl would tell you to stay for the sake of the kids. So Pearl thinks a mom's happiness doesn't matter, only the male's sexual pleasure. That's why she talks so much about sex in marriage and not having romance and chivalry and kindness and empathy towards each other in a marriage. She focuses on the sex because the incels always are focused on sex. They're really disgusting type of ogre men who are really a threat to society because they are such sexual deviants because of the fact they haven't actually got to have a woman and learn kindness and grown up. They're watching hours and hours and hours of graphic porn that has programmed their mind. And they are almost homoerotic at the same time because they talk about the Chads, about how the Chads are able to be mean to women, hurt women, and they're able to still get in women's pants. So they idolize the serial killers, the domestic abusers, the rich playboys, because they want to be those men who can hurt women and still get booty. They're not with money or with looks, so they resent women for not sleeping with them, and they don't want to work as hard as those other men to get power and status, so they live vicariously through the most violent men and through the pimps who make the pornography. So it's a really deep and complex movement that I'm trying to condense as quickly as possible in this video, but you will start to notice this trend. And so PearlyThings is a threat to women, and since she's influencing red pill Muslim men, it is important to consistently attack her ideas and her moral character and her inherent hypocrisy, because we don't want our daughters listening to someone like PearlyThings, and we don't want our sons thinking that's how a good woman is, someone who lets you sleep around town. And John Zahra, who she's promoting, who she's trying to help get views, who she's trying to platform, is not a role model for Christian men and not a role model for Muslim men. And therefore, because he's a loudmouth drug addict, he admits to smoking crack and using cocaine and drinking. He's someone who thinks he understands occultism, but you can tell by the way he talks about it, he's just memorized a couple of 2-minute videos and now thinks he's an expert. But he's a scatterbrained, hedonistic drug addict who Pearl is promoting to the youth by asking him, "Who are you? Where did you come from?" And she's giggling and flirty, so the young men see, like, oh, well, she likes him, she's being kind to him, and she dunks on women all the time. He must be good. The young men are very vulnerable in terms of their father figures. The Red Pill Muslim manosphere, and the Red Pill manosphere in general, amongst the Christians and secularists, is about father figures. So these red pillars are a danger and threat to the fatherless young men. And they also encourage the young men to not like their fathers, who are more honorable and stay loyal in marriage and don't constantly focus on sex. And so it's important for us to debunk their ideas, to dismantle their arguments, to not let up on them, and to do a sort of crusade against them. Because their ideology has to be wiped away from the youth. And if we just let them continue to spread their ideas, by the time they permeate in our society and in our culture and hurt somebody we love, it'll be too late. So we have to stop them while they haven't infected everyone's minds. Let me know what you think.